I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and president of retention as a service agency Electric, as well as the co-founder of Scaleless. And today I'm talking with Zoe Kahn, who's the VP of retention at Audien Hearing and the founder of Inevitable Agency, which is a customer experience agency. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Brandon and I have crossed paths a lot. And since I used to work at Chomps, I was the manager of retention and CX there. And I think that's the first time that I heard about Electric. And then we were always at the same events and stuff. So it's exciting to sit down and chat more about retention, CX, all the things.
Yeah, I feel like every Gorgeous event I go to, there's a 99% chance that you will also be there.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with Gorgeous, and because I've just been a user of it for a very long time, and have seen it grow. So I'm always at those events because it's cool to see and connect with other CX and retention people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we jump into things here, can you give everybody just a quick background on yourself?
Yeah. So I have I've been, my journey is definitely unique. So I actually got into e-commerce from starting as a part-time customer support agent for Ghost, actually, supplements and energy drinks, if you guys have been familiar. Before that, I actually managed GNCs for almost 4 years in different states. I managed 5 different GNCs, and I was actually kind of sick of the retail, having to, go into the office or go into somewhere to open up a store. But I loved health and nutrition and supplements and all those things. So I actually was taking a break from working full time, and I was going back to school for dietetics. And when I was leaving GNC, Ghost had a part-time opening for customer support. And I thought, oh, that's seems kind of cool to do while I'm going to school and everything. In my first 2 weeks doing that position, I was enamored by business and that being even just in the support inbox taught me so much about all the different Shopify apps and how to, it was just a whole nother world of being behind the scenes of a brand rather than selling them in retail. And it didn't take me long to get very distracted from school and just want to be working for Ghost full time. So that's kind of how my start into e-commerce happened. And I learned so much, grew so much with Ghost, ended up helping them even open up their own warehouse, and learned all about the operations and marketing and all these things, all just from starting out as just, oh, sure, I'll do this part-time customer support. And yeah, from there, I just really, really fell in love with e-commerce and I have a special place in my heart for being just very customer centric. Because that's where I started. And then, I did a little hiatus that we don't need to get into, but I played video games full time for 6 months, after Ghost. It's a whole nother story. And then I worked for Chomps, the meat sticks, Better For You meat sticks was an amazing, opportunity there too. And I ended up, taking over all of retention there. So that's kind of where I got to spread my wings and really own all of subscriptions, loyalties, email, SMS, and then I also saw CX still. So it's been really fun to kind of start as a customer experience person and see how it overlaps with everything in business. And I accidentally started my agency called Inevitable that you mentioned earlier, Brandon, because people started asking me for help and for consulting, and I didn't even understand that. I didn't even know what that meant. But the more requests that I got, the more I understood there was a need for a better understanding in customer experience in e-commerce. And I ended up I felt like I didn't want to say no to all the incoming like requests of help, because it's just like a very interesting thing, because for me, customer experience retention, sometimes it's like, and Brandon, I don't know if you feel like this too, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just doing my job, like I don't realize that I'm doing anything like remarkable or different or anything. But every time I got on a call with like another founder, they'd pick my brain and be like, oh wow, that's a great idea, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know, I just do this. So I ended up hiring help to keep up with like all the inbound requests, because I was still working full time. And
Mhm.
then yeah, I accidentally created the agency. It's about a year and a half old now. And I still actually only do the agency kind of part time, and like I basically like mentor for the agency and make sure that everyone's like good and understands. And if they come across any challenges, I'm there to help. But I've got a whole team who I trust and love, and they do an amazing job running the agency. And then in my day to day, I'm the VP of retention and CX at Audien Hearing, which is an over the counter hearing aid company. And it's also a beautiful experience to go through, because we're helping a lot of people here. It's a need that needs to be met, and it's really cool to be a part of. And yeah, so that's what I do with most of my time is focused on Audien Hearing, and then I plug in with Inevitable when needed.
So, what is the transition sort of been like for you from working in house at a brand and then accidentally falling into the agency and having to get things set up in a place where you're not the one who's doing the actual work, you have other people that are doing it for you. uh, I guess what were some of the trials and tribulations along that journey?
There's so many, and there's like every single day. I haven't figured it out yet. Brandon, I might need to like get some tips from you, but I'm a very much a person who I keep saying this. I'm like the worst businesswoman. I'm like, as long as I can pay people and like clients are happy, like that's all I care about. And I push the limits of like, oh yeah, like you barely have to pay us for that. It won't take us long. And then like, I don't set good boundaries. So that's like definitely the hardest part with the agency is like pricing and managing time, and understanding that like for me something might take me only an hour, but someone else it might take them 3 or 4 hours. And so I've had to really like learn about managing people in a different way, where I have to, how it is. It's just like it's hard to understand how long things take and what people need. And with customer experience in particular, it's not like retention, where it's like, okay, the deliverables are, 5 email campaigns a month and a one flow revision. And it's there's always fires, there's always like things coming up, there's like things break. And so we are there to support our clients in like anytime anything that they need. But it's definitely very challenging, because when you go from like yourself and just doing consulting, it's like, okay, they paid me for this, and like I made this money and I'll just get the job done. But when you get employees involved, then it's gets a little bit complicated, because you need to space out the money and pay people. So that's like the hardest thing that I've experienced with the agency, is just like figuring out how to make it profitable. But regardless, I know that it'll come one day, but I just am very happy to be able to like help brands reshape their customer experience and like their retention efforts in a different, much more like customer centric way.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's way more variability than some of the other like service offerings that some agencies provide.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the pricing and packaging is always, I think, the hardest part, uh,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the early days as we were growing. The constant dilemma of selling into new clients, but then maybe not having the bandwidth internally and then, you only have one more client, so you don't need a full-time person necessarily. Because if you get the full-time person, then, you might not be profitable that month. And it's just this sort of constant back and forth. But when it comes to, like you mentioned, customer experience and retention, I imagine that with, is it Audien or Audien? Am I saying it?
Audien,
With
yeah.
them, it's not really retention, is it? It's more, customer experience. Because is there a repeatable nature to the product, or is it, one time and then they're sort of off and running?
It's actually super interesting because I thought the same thing, because I came from like immediately I was with Chomps, and like they eat it, they need more. They just need to be reminded, and like put them on a subscription, like grow the subscription and make sure that they eat it constantly and remind them to eat it so that they need more. Where Audien, actually, the biggest retention efforts that I work on right now are actually customer education, because they if they return the product,
Mm-hmm.
that's very, very unprofitable. And so we need to make sure that they know how to use it, and they're educated, and they have the tools and the resources, and they understand that like there's a team here at Audien to help them make sure that they can use it. Because if they can't use it, they'll return it, and then it's like that's the opposite of retention. So
Yes.
it's like negative retention. So that's actually one of like the biggest like retention efforts that I work on. But there's also it's kind of like an iPhone, where there we come out with new units with different features that might, and we're also really big about affordable hearing for everyone, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing with like over the counter hearing aids is, if you get a prescription hearing aid, it could cost anywhere between like $3,000 to $12,000, and insurance a lot of times doesn't cover it. So it's really interesting. I was just talking to an audiologist, and she said that she thinks 60% of her clients go like talk to her, get a hearing test, and then at the end just go without hearing because they can't afford the hearing aid,
Mm-hmm.
which is super sad, because it's like you take your hearing for granted. But we have different models that cost like as cheap as $99. So compared to the 3,000, that's like insane, right?
Yeah.
But we have none that are over 1,000 yet. But we have any like ranges between $99 to almost 500. So
Got it.
sometimes the retention aspect will come in as like maybe someone tried the $99 one. They know you kind of get what you pay for, and they want like the more advanced unit. And so
Mm-hmm.
there is an aspect of retention as far as like having them get the better units. But it's
Right.
kind of like you need to gain their trust first and all those things. So it's really, really about customer education and making sure they're happy with the product. Because if they're happy, they'll repurchase in the future too.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different than something where, it's such a natural replenishment journey where you're
Mm-hmm.
literally consuming the product
Yeah.
versus, something that is, like a physical product that I'm imagining lasts for, quite a long period of time. But yeah, I had no idea. I was browsing through the website earlier, and I never would have expected that hearing aids were so expensive. Uh, and these ones are like, sleek looking too. So maybe I can finally convince my mother to to go get some, because
Yeah.
my it's like, the some of the older people I know in my life are so stubborn, and they just like don't hear anything. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just this is so frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually really interesting. And that's like part of my challenge too, because one of the highest reasons for someone returning is actually it's a family or friend or loved one who bought for someone else, and then
Mhm.
the family member resisted trying. So then they return it. And so that's actually one of it goes into more of like the growth and retention side, where it's like, how do you break the stigma? And one of the things that I'm working on for breaking the stigma is we launched a community, and I know community is like very trendy right now, but I didn't know how it would go because all of our customers are 65 plus, or most of them are 65 plus. And, but so I'm like, I don't know. I do feel like they have Facebook. I'm not sure, but it's been the most like wholesome, beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like there's people who will join and I ask them why in their questions before joining. Sometimes they'll say like, I'm lonely and I want to make friends. And sometimes it says like, I want to connect with others with hearing loss because, I don't have a lot of people in my life who also have hearing loss, all these things. But right now I'm using it more of as a base for people who are already customers. But the goal is to build the community a little bit bigger, and then also invite others who are not customers so that they can see that like it's okay to have hearing aids. Like look at all these happy people. Look at how many people like watch them talk about how it's changed their lives to be able to like hear their grandkids again and all these things. So that's it's also a very interesting part of the business, is just like changing people's mindset so that they don't think that it's embarrassing to have a hearing aid.
Yeah, like, removing that stigma associated with it. Are you using Facebook groups or for the community?
Yeah, I just created a private Facebook group, and it's something that I'm very like I'm building it very slow but sure. Like at first, I only invited 100%, like made sure it's happy customers, right? Because with a product, and I think a lot of businesses actually struggle with this, where everyone's different, and so there's things that where our products might not be the best for everyone. And we're like really transparent about that. Like if you have severe hearing loss, you shouldn't do over-the-counter hearing aids at all, right? But if someone doesn't know that they have severe hearing loss, but then they purchase it and then it's just like doesn't give them the outcome that they want, then they might be upset. So it's kind of like you have to figure out how to balance those relationships with something like that. I see this in supplements too a lot, actually, because people will like, yeah, everyone's different, and they like someone might buy a supplement and it might not work for them because for whatever reason, and then they'll like call that company trash, all those things. So you have to kind of like manage your like your good and your not so good experiences and learn from them. So I'm trying being very strategic about like the way we grow the community, so that we can protect like all of the like happy and the unhappy people, and make sure that the unhappy people, we figure out how to make a product for them in the future, or just be very transparent and like explain why they might not be happy with the product, kind of thing.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, showcasing negative reviews, not only on the website, but in other areas as well too?
Yeah, this is such an I'm I'm all for transparency. I think that it depends on what's going on, but I think it's better to reply publicly and address whatever the concern is, than to like delete something, because people know, like that person who posted it will know if you deleted it, right? And that's like very bad word of mouth. You'll see people will post like, I kept posting about this, but they kept deleting it. Like this company's a scam. You see that on like ads and stuff. But I think there's a beautiful thing about being vulnerable and accepting responsibility for like mistakes, because businesses aren't perfect. There's always going to be things that happen, and you can actually, going back to like the customer experience side, is you're dealing with problems all the time, and you find a way to attack them in a way where you can really like turn around the experience, and like these very unhappy people can actually turn into your like most like your most valuable customers. Like they might come back and purchase everything and like tell their story about how something got messed up in their first order. But on the other end, if there's review sites or platforms that you're not able to reply to publicly, uh, that's where it gets hard because you can't. It doesn't give you the room to like defend yourself, and so
Mm-hmm.
some in those aspects, me personally, I might try to find a way to like still help that person, but get rid of the negative, like, or ask them honest. Actually, that's like, if you can figure out how to contact someone and ask, like, make it right and then ask them to remove it, that's like best case scenario.
Yeah, I think the way that we've addressed it in the past is if it's a negative review that isn't super relevant in the sense of, maybe it was something crazy happened with the shipping and the package got lost, or
Mm-hmm.
1 star for the product. It's like that's not really 1 star reflecting the actual experience that the customer had with the product. It was like something that was out of anyone's control and isn't going to be relatively isn't going to
Yeah.
be helpful for anyone who's on the website, versus if it's somebody where it really just didn't work for them because maybe they do have that severe hearing loss. That's something that could still be relevant to show because you want to mitigate those people from purchasing anyways, type of deal.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't it's very it's very unprofitable to sell to people who the product's not good for them because then you're so if you can figure out a way to just be transparent, like it's not all about how many sales you can get, it's about how many people that the product's right for, and finding those people to purchase, because there's plenty of people out there.
Yeah. How do you think your strategy towards CX and retention has changed over the last 4 years with new technologies coming out and things of that nature?
There's so much. Well, obviously, there's the whole AI and automations.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have been doing a lot of automating and really like directing the way you want a customer to reach out to you, because like this is actually very common in a lot of businesses still, where you have there's not much thought about like how a customer can reach you. You put your phone number, you put your email address, and maybe you have a contact page. But over time, I've realized it's super inefficient to let a customer choose how they reach out to you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's much more efficient and profitable to guide them where what works for you, because the customer actually doesn't care how they get their problem fixed, they just want it fixed. And so if you tell them like, okay, you have to fill out this contact form, and then by using that contact form you can reroute all, like, do back end automations to make sure it gets done very very quickly. That's where I feel like customer experience, retention, all those things, they're being more there's more eyes on it. And I think that over time people are being better about cross-functional communication between, I think that the customer and like being customer centric is kind of like the glue in that, because it's always coming from the customer. But even just getting like operations and marketing to talk to each other, and relaying, creating better feedback loops, I think that has changed over time, and utilizing like AI to do all of these things, and using AI to do the things that you don't need a human to do. And really, like, now you're managing automations and you're managing tech rather than managing lots of people. And
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of got like a segue of both tech and people. And it's been definitely very different from when I started years and years ago.
Yeah. Would you say that you're typically employing, less people because of the fact that you're able to, streamline the basic questions and things like that, leveraging things like AI? So as opposed to, needing 5 customer service agents, maybe you only need 3?
I haven't seen any like active firing, um, but I definitely think it's slowing down the hiring process
Mm-hmm.
because I have one actually. Audien is that we get a lot of tickets and phone calls, like tons. It's the most I've ever seen. We have a team of almost 60 agents. Um, so it's a lot to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've automated. It's also hard to say because as you grow, you naturally, need more people and everything. But then you also want to play around and make sure that you're not wasting your money or time with things that you don't need to spend money and time on. But what I've noticed is we've been able to like automate so much in a very cheap way,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're able to utilize our people to do like product testing calls and learn more like voice of the customer type stuff. So we were able to take like, I think we have like 6 people who most of their day job is calling customers and just making sure that they're happy. And then also just like gathering feedback and figuring out what we can do better. And it is really like we want to invest in that because it results in so many different things. It's like great word of mouth, reviews. Like a lot of times we'll see that they'll like post positive reviews and talk about Audien more. Some of these people are in like nursing homes and like they can literally go down the hall and like tell all their friends about these hearing aids and like the experience. And so we're able to I do think that it's slowing down the reactive hiring, but we're able to utilize, there's always work to be done, so if you have good people, you don't need to fire them necessarily. It's like, how do you utilize them to make more profit, and how do you utilize them to give better experiences and all those things. So I don't think people should be afraid of I think just use it to work smarter.
Yeah. No, are you like, you mentioned the word of mouth, you know, walking down the hallway and being able to talk to somebody. Are you employing anything like a referral program or no? And then, also given the fact that your audience is a lot older, if you aren't using one, do you even think that it would work? Because, maybe they're not the most technologically sophisticated group.
Yeah, I don't. We don't use one yet. Yeah, I don't know how I feel yet. I haven't really like tried to implement something because of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think right now there's like bigger fish to fry. So and if you can get someone to refer someone for like the con of it is that you can't track it, where like a referral program is really cool because you can just like see exactly who's doing what and how many. But if we can just kind of know that people are going to be doing it without having to reward them in any way anyways, then I think that's a win in the meantime.
Yeah. No, I'm very like hit or miss on the loyalty and referral programs anyways. Seems like a lot of times they're more trouble than they actually are worth.
Yeah, the one thing that I actually am really interested in figuring out is the membership part. Um,
Mhm.
because we give a lot of time and effort into our customer base. And I think that if you look at it in a more premium, like white glove type service, I think that there people might want a I don't know, like a monthly check-in that they can count on, because if they were going to get a prescription hearing aid, part of that cost is paying like the audiologist for your check-ins and stuff, where that's kind of missing on our end, where we'll be there if you call us and we'll help you. But I think that there's like something there for like a membership for more of like a proactive and premium type support experience. So that's something that I would probably try before doing a referral program.
Are there any things that you run into, like um, from a medical standpoint? I know there's a bunch of rules and requirements around what can and cannot be said. Does that impact what you're able to do from a customer service standpoint at all?
You just have to know the laws. It's just like I know it's so different, but I'm just so used to like the supplement world, but it's just like supplements where, you can't give someone a meal plan if you're not a registered dietitian, but you can tell them information and you can like the yeses and nos. And you just have to really know the boundaries of understanding. Like if someone tells us they have severe hearing loss, like we cannot we cannot encourage them to really purchase. We can inform them that like we can say certain things, but we can't. It's not. I don't know if it's illegal, but it's definitely like unethical to try to sell someone something that like if they have, it's not going to work the best for them. So we don't really run into anything like too crazy, I would say. Because that's really the only like one of the only like rules is the severe hearing loss, and then it's just keeping up with all of the updates, just like anything. But that's like the FDA and consumables as well. Like you just need to make sure that you keep up with all the rules and you know what's going on, and you make sure you follow the rules.
I got one last question for you. For other people that are managing their own customer experience teams, what would be like one tip or trick that they should be doing, especially going into what is for almost every business the busiest time of the year? What's one thing that they should all be doing that they might not be doing yet?
The foundation of experience is really important. So what I see a lot is people putting up band-aids on issues or just responding to things that should probably be dug into a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And like organization too. I was surprised how many companies that I like audit where they don't understand what like a zero inbox looks like for their customer service. So if you those are like two very basic but important things, is like making sure that you understand like a zero inbox and you can get there. And if you can't, you have to figure out why. And then two is that foundation and figuring out like what can you actually fix rather than putting band-aids on, and try to do that before Black Friday because it'll save so much time and effort.
I've definitely seen customer support inboxes that have never been to zero, and they probably never will be. And I don't know, that just in and of itself would stress me out so much if I never was able to get it to that point.
Yeah, that's send them our way, because that's kind of like it's so interesting how many, exactly what you said. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would die. Like I would just die. But we clean things up like that a lot because it's figuring out like, I don't know. I love like puzzles and problem solving and all of that. And it's just like one big kind of like puzzle and figuring out what's wrong and why it's not like that. Why it's not zero inbox every day or every other day. Yeah, but it's not easy. It's challenging.
Yeah, definitely not easy, but it reminds me of people who have like hundreds of unread text messages or emails, and that stresses me out too. So
That's funny because I am that person.
You are that
all
person?
of the brand emails are under control. Me personally, not.
Yeah, I've got one email inbox that has gone, completely to shit, but all the other ones, at least starting the week, they're down to zero, or they're put somewhere, in a to do later. But yeah, I just can't. I can't look at those unread notifications, especially on like Slack too. It's too much.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, I get that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time and all the insight. But before we hop, can you let everybody know where they can connect with you and find you online?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, Zoe Kahn, Zoe Kahn. I also have a podcast. It's called Let's Laugh About It. It's a very like hodgepodge podcast. Definitely like sometimes you'll learn something. Sometimes we just like rant about random stuff. So it's a very laid back podcast. And I have a CX newsletter too that you can find if you search Zoe Kahn and Inevitable. Inevitable Agency is the name of the agency, and it's inevitableagency.co is the website if you want to check it out.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to it in the show notes as well. But again, thanks for coming on. For everybody listening, as always, this is Brandon Amoroso, and you can find me at brandonamoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. And we will see you next time.